Hi, welcome everybody. I'm Jason Barnard. This is the finale of the TPAS 2020 Travel Payouts Affiliate Summit. I'm really pleased to be here with Tristam. We've already done 2 episodes of this traffic show and it's been really interesting. The SEO traffic show has been a big success, and big thank you to Travel Payouts for making it a big success. Big thank you for Tristam for being here and helping make it a great success. This is the 3rd episode and it's going to be the best. That is something I'm absolutely sure about. Now, on to the little introductions. Slide number 2, please, Tristam. On the left, we see Tristam Jarman, who's a super duper SEO expert. I've known him for a year now, maybe. He's proved himself to be very intelligent, very helpful, very knowledgeable. He's the co-founder, of Purple Smudge. Welcome, Tristam.
Hey Jason, how you doing? That's very kind of you to say as well. I appreciate
very
that.
Honest of me to say. Credit where credit's due. You've been absolutely awesome on this series so far. And I'm really pleased to have you here. I get to just kind of leap in with clever comments every now and then, but it's actually Tristam who carries the heavy lifting here. I'm Jason Barnard. I'm the brand SERP guy. The brand SERP guy meaning that I am obsessed and expert about what appears when somebody Googles your brand name or your personal brand name, something I don't think anyone else in the world is looking at. So if you're interested in brand SERPs, knowledge panels, and how to better your reputation, do talk to me at calicube.pro. Tristam has control of the slide, so I actually have to ask him each time, but he's going to take over, so we're going to have less of that back and forth. We're analysing 2 websites, himalayadestination.com and gptouring.com.au. And Tristam really wanted to focus on 2 things, because both of these sites have two problems in common: HTTP and content. And so he wants to talk about why your site should be HTTPS and why lack of or too much bad content is a bad thing, and how you can improve that situation, which I think is phenomenally important. So I'm going to pass over to welcome on board Tristam Jarman. I love the design of the slides. Take it away, boy.
Thank you. Hey everyone, as Jason said, I'm Tristam Jarman. I just want to say a quick thank you to Travel Payouts for having me yesterday and again today. This is the 3rd episode of the SEO Traffic Show and I'm excited to get this underway. So what I want to talk today about is HTTP, or really HTTPS, which is more of the bigger situation. And some of you might be looking at this going, I'm not entirely sure what you're going on about here, so let's get started. So HTTP was introduced to the internet in 1999 and was used first year that HTTP was used to communicate across the World Wide Web. I was a lot younger in those days. The years went by and HTTP became the foundation for communication over the internet. Everything sent between the client and server, all data, information, content, etc., goes through HTTP. The issue now that communication over HTTP alone is simply not safe enough, or as safe as it used to be. So why is that important? Information on HTTP can get intercepted, it can get manipulated or even stolen by hackers without any advanced layer of security. And this is where HTTPS comes in. It's a more secure version of HTTP, which is where the S comes in. That stands for secure, and this is what's being added, the security protocol. You know, it encrypts the transfer of data and resources. So HTTP versus HTTPS. Still in this day and age though, not all websites are HTTPS, yet security issues are increasing over time. And then having a look at HTTPS as being a ranking factor. So there have been studies to show that HTTPS appears to correlate to better rankings on Google. So in 2014, Google discussed they wanted to make a more secure internet. They even had a presentation called HTTPS Everywhere. They've also stated we've seen positive results, so we're starting to use HTTPS as a ranking signal. Then they went on to say, for now, it's only a lightweight signal, affecting fewer than 1% of global queries and carrying less weight than other signals, such as high quality content. So while we give webmasters time to switch to HTTPS, now Google then took matters into their own hand in 2015 when it explained that HTTPS may serve as a tiebreaker. Although two websites may have the same or similar content of equal quality, the HTTPS site may therefore actually rank higher out of those two. So let's just quickly jump into trust. So trust, but this is where it gets multifaceted, I feel, with user experience versus ranking signals. We should always be looking to create the best user experience, in my opinion, rather than running after what's a ranking signal at the moment, because we know some ranking signals come, some ranking signals go. So my feeling is always give the best user experience, and they're kind of the people that are going to be paying us at the end of the day. And so what happens with trust when we're seeing things like not secure? So put my teeth in, with regards to user experience, this messaging could scare a visitor away and encourage them to find a different, more secure website. So as you can imagine, that's exactly what's happened. After Chrome introduced this warning for non-HTTPS websites, they saw bounce rates increase. So what does that mean for your website? Crucially, it means a loss of sales conversion, simply because a customer doesn't trust your site as much as a site that doesn't have this big secure sign. And I'll show you an example of how that looks shortly. So, you know, in fact, a 2016 survey found that 84% of users would abandon a transaction if the website was shown to be insecure, and that was in 2016. As we're all aware, we're in 2020 now, so just think how people's perceptions and sort of thought processes have evolved since 2016. But in short, HTTPS won't necessarily increase your online sales, but without it, you could risk losing customers due to a lack of trust. So it's all about reducing visitor anxiety. After all, we would feel, you know, would you feel more comfortable using a credit card on a shop which doesn't have this warning sign versus one that does have this warning sign? And so when we're looking at HTTPS, we need to be looking at certificates and getting the right certificate installed in place with your website. There's a number of ways that you can do this to make your site HTTPS, but just a little tip here, there's even some free options that can be explored. So yesterday I was doing a session on SEO, competing with large SEO brands, but with a minimal SEO budget. So my mindset's still in that. So if you're sitting there going, I might not have the money to be throwing around to make my site HTTPS, and buying certificates, etc. As I said, there are free options. So please do go and check out sites like let'sencrypt.org and see what options they've got, because it might be either an interim or a progressionary point for you in getting a certificate and making your site HTTPS. And this is one of the, I'm such a nerd, this is one of the more fun areas, migrating from HTTP to HTTPS. So we've talked about HTTP and HTTPS, but what if you want to, you've got your site and it's HTTP and you're thinking, this all sounds great, I need to go and migrate my site to HTTPS. So here's a short overview of what needs to take place. In short, by creating your HTTPS website, you now have a new version of your website. You'll have the HTTP version and you'll have the HTTPS version. And if you were just to do that alone, you would effectively have two websites. So what you need to do is look at putting redirects in place. So if your redirects are not in place for the HTTP version of the website and specific URLs to their respective HTTPS version, as I say, you'll have two versions of your site or specific pages. So that's not great. And there's also other issues that need to be taken into account. such as double checking you've switched all your tracking and ad scripts to HTTPS. Otherwise, they'll be blocking browsers. I've actually sourced a great checklist that I'll throw into the chat once I come out of the slides from our leader Solace. It's actually, I'm just going to jump into it now. Give me 2 seconds because it is a fantastic thing.
And a quick point about SSL certificates. I mean, as you rightly said, there are free certificates, there are cheap certificates, and there are very expensive certificates. And I think it's not always clear to site owners what the difference is. I mean, a free one and is just as secure as a cheap one, and a cheap one is just as secure as an expensive one, depending on the type of encryption, of course. But the expensive ones give a bigger guarantee if something goes wrong for your company. So that kind of the expense question is more about your own safety, your own security as a company. And the other difference is that some certificates are more complete. You can have certificates that just show the little padlock in the browser address bar, and you can have ones that actually show your company name, which are called, I can't remember, is it ESL? And those tend to be more expensive. They're more difficult to get. But the idea is that when somebody clicks on it, they see details about your company. They see your company name in the SSL certificate directly. And that makes them feel reassured that the SSL certificate issuer, an independent party, has checked up on the company, and the company behind the website can be even more trusted if that's possible. So that was just a quick idea about whether you should spend a lot of money on it or not.
Oh, that was great. We can actually see my screen again. Perfect. So this is the checklist. And I don't know whether you've come across this before, Jason, but it's, you know, anything to do with iLeader is fairly thorough, thought through, and really worth using. So as I say, after I come out of the slides and everything, I'll drop this link into the chat box. It's well worth checking out because what it covers is before launching, during launching, and after launching. I can't stress enough how important it is to get this right. And through working with different people, clients, or just being in the SEO industry, I have seen things go incredibly right, things go incredibly wrong, and things where I'm like, I think you were lucky there. That seemed to go well with no planning. So that actually brings me on.
Well, sorry, Jason, that's a very good point. Is it's a very seemingly very simple change, seemingly very minor change, but it can have major consequences because, as you say, technically it's actually two different sites, and that can make things go horribly wrong. And quickly back to Aleda Solis, if you're going to follow somebody on Twitter, obviously follow Tristan and myself. We're really great, but Aleda is a wonderful human being who really knows her stuff, and she's often sharing free resources like that can help you with your SEO and help you make the right decisions at the right times for specific problems and questions.
Definitely, definitely. And then this neatly brings us on to planning. Please, 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 if you are choosing to migrate over to HTTPS, take your time and plan when you're doing this. As I said, I've heard some horror stories of things going bad. An example of this is a large e-commerce website. When the redirects from the HTTP URLs were put in place, each URL was redirected to the home page and not its respective URL, which is a bit of a nightmare. Ideally, what you want to do, quick example, say we sell t-shirts and we've just got 4 pages. We've got home page, white t-shirt, black t-shirt, grey t-shirt. And with our new website, we want the white t-shirt HTTP page to go to its respective HTTPS version, not the home page. This is to do with traffic, being crawled, indexed and ranked, keyword rankings, link juice, all sorts of things. It's imperative that you make sure these things are done properly. I think it was Dawn Anderson, I saw tweeting a while ago about certain WordPress plugins that You can get a WordPress plugin that will help you do all these redirects, but you need to check these things, because this particular WordPress plugin, I think, did the nasty thing of taking all pages and just redirecting them to the home page, which is not an ideal situation. So as I say, please, please, please plan and think about what you're doing. Yeah, just sometimes things can get a little out of control if not done in a staged process. Another example is mixed content. And I think in one of the previous episodes we did, I think it was episode 1, we actually looked at a particular site that actually had mixed content on there. And what I mean by that is you'll have HTTP content, images, etc., on an HTTPS content page, and they're being loaded at the same time on the same page. And the initial request is over HTTPS, but this is then still flagging warnings because you'll have this non-secure content being served on the page. So even though you're like, my site's HTTPS, I've migrated, I've done everything I needed to do, but you might have forgot to do an image folder and migrate that over to HTTPS, and you've linked back to the HTTP images. What have we got? We've got that horrible warning sign that I'll show you later on. You think everything's fine. You're seeing a warning sign. I'll show you a little bit of how to uncover that further.
That can be very frustrating because it's very difficult to figure out which particular element on which particular page. And the problem is that the browser, especially Chrome, will show an error generally. So in fact, it looks like your site isn't secure when in fact it is, except for this one image. And I gave this tip, I think, in that first episode. If you're using WordPress, there's a plugin called Really Simple SSL, and that sorts out the problem for you really, really quickly and simply. Quick word of warning, make a backup of your entire site before installing that plugin. They say it themselves, but I found it to be incredibly effective, incredibly easy, and I don't use anything else now.
No, that's an awesome tip. And so, yeah, there's many more stories I could tell, some with far bigger consequences, but, you know, we haven't got time to cover them at the moment, maybe a few more later on. Just quickly, a shameless plug, but if you're interested in looking at a live site audit and getting some further information on this, I'm doing a SEMrush live site audit on the 28th of October. So if you're interested, get in contact and I can send you the link to get signed up for that. It's going to be a really interesting show. So it'd be awesome to have you along. And so if we have a look at the first site, Himalaya destination, but what you can see here is this site is not secure, where I've clicked on it and then the little drop down box, I don't think, is the drop down box showing on your screen,
no,
Jason?
It's not showing, I'm afraid.
But next to the address bar, you'll see that it says not secure. And so this is what I feel is starting to, and you know, some of the studies I spoke about, is putting people off. Your website could be fantastic, but people are seeing this and then they're learning more and more information where it's like, well, I shouldn't be using sites with this security warning, or you don't know anything about these security warnings and you just see that. You know, I know many people that wouldn't necessarily know why this is here and just see that and kind of go, this seems bad, I need to leave. When your website's lovely, you just need to put some simple processes in place. And then what's cool is this slide here. So this is SEMrush's site audit tool. And what I did was I ran Himalaya destination through it. And what you can see, just so I double check everything, that this box here actually states HTTPS is not implemented on this site. So I kind of knew that, and I run a few other checks as well. But just to double check, I crawled the site and made sure that I was 100% correct. So there's a few points to be looking at there.
Which is a real pity because the other scores, crawlability, site performance and internal linking, are actually quite good.
Yeah, that's it. So yeah, it's an interesting one. And then the second site I tried to crawl was gptouring.com.au. So just quickly, if you're in the chat watching this and this is your site, I wasn't able to crawl the site with my site crawling tools. That might be because you've got your blocking crawlers, or you've got a firewall or something like that. But if you're looking to crawl your own site with SEMrush's tool or another site crawler, you might just want to have a look in that, because you might be hitting a blocker and not being able to crawl your site. But again, we are receiving up here is the not secure sign. So again, this website is selling tickets for GP events, and then you're getting the not secure sign. So again, somebody just might be put off by that. And it's just as simple as this: click back to Google, pogo stick onto another site that they feel a little bit more comfortable, the right sort of, trust signals are there, and therefore, sadly, you've lost out on that sale. So let me jump back into the slides. And so just a quick roundup on HTTP versus HTTPS. So, excuse me, Jason, just when do you think you should migrate from HTTP to HTTPS, and why? Because I have my opinions, but when
you should have done it was years ago. I mean, the thing about it is it isn't particularly complicated to do. Google have said for a long time they're very interested in that. Chrome has made it. I mean, Chrome is what, 80% of the market, 75% of the market. Chrome is making it very obvious to users now if you're not, if you don't have an HTTPS site, and they're making it quite scary. That whole kind of not secure message. We don't know what secure means, but not secure is bad. So if you haven't already done it, you really should have done. I'm sorry to give advice which is so belittling, perhaps. And if you haven't done it yet, you should definitely plan to do it by the end of the year. I mean, I can't think of a single reason not to do it this year if technically it's possible. So in terms of timing, yesterday would have been great. If you can't do it yesterday, do it tomorrow.
Exactly. And so although we quickly looked at the websites and can see they aren't HTTPS, that doesn't mean it can be a quick, easy fix, but it doesn't necessarily mean every website's a quick, easy fix. So, that's due to size, complexities, a number of other factors. But just think, plan, execute, and double check everything. And do check out that guide that I will pop in chat shortly for our leaders checklist. Security, I feel, is something that is just going to need to be increasing over time. Hackers and other malicious people and programs out there are getting smarter and smarter. So, I've, like Jason said, do it. We've seen that HTTPS can affect rankings, but don't just think about rankings. It's about customer satisfaction, making them feel confident with your website and helping them complete a goal, task, etc. And don't put them off and send them running to another website simply. So get your HTTPS sorted. And likewise, if you've got any questions now or afterwards where you're like, I didn't have a chance to ask that question, or you're watching this back pre-recorded and you're like, actually, I've got a question, do get in contact with myself or Jason. We'd love to talk further and sort of geek out on how to help you with that process.
Right. So quickly, just before we carry on, Andrew asks, is it important how long the SSL certificate lasts for? He got one for 3 months. He was asking if you should get one for 3 years. The answer is no, it just needs to be secure. But if you get a short-term one, you keep having to renew it, and it's a technical question that you keep having to address. And each time you address that technical question, there's another possibility you might break your site. So I would suggest installing something for the longer term would be a good bet.
Yeah, I totally agree. And also, I don't personally know, maybe you do, Jason, if there's a way of being updated when your certificate is ending. I'm sure there is.
Most vendors will send you lots of emails because they want to get your money for the next part. I personally use Google Cloud, which does provisioning directly, and using the Google ones, which are free. And so that just renews automatically, so I don't even have to think about it. But ask the person who looks after your site technically, either your hosting provider or your developer, for advice about how they suggest you could do it. But as you say, it can go from very cheap to very expensive. You need to make the choice that's relevant for your company. And getting a longer certificate avoids the fact that you have to remember to renew it all the time, and also avoids every time you do it, you take a little bit of a risk that you might mess your site up. Right, content.
Just one last bit on that, because I have seen this happen where it can happen on a weekday or over a weekend where a company's certificate has expired, and then you do get a multitude of issues that come off the back of that.
Good point.
So yeah, I want to jump into content because I know time sensitive, but don't let it expire if it shouldn't be expiring. Just please, a huge word of warning. So yes, content. So let's have a look at lack of or too much bad content and how to improve that situation. So let me again just seamlessly jump from one page to another. I did so in previous episodes I've talked about Google search operators. So it's I won't go into it too much. It's cool little things you can type into Google. So this here quickly, what I've highlighted, says sites, where they semicolons, and then you type in.
It's a colon. Sorry, just I have to correct that because it's site colon, no space, and a lot of people put a space after the colon. No space, domain name, and in this case, I mean, if you just do that, then you get a list of all the pages that are indexed from that site. And in this case, you've added after the domain name a space in URL colon, and then whatever the string is you're looking for in the URL, and it will filter the URLs that contain whatever string it is you've got after that second colon after the in URL. Sorry, carry on, please.
Exactly. So I love doing this because I feel it uncovers, it can uncover, if you have problems, can uncover problems with your site that, you know, you don't need to use a crawler or, you know, in a sense sort of have advanced technical SEO knowledge of how certain, you know, programs like Screaming Frog or SEMrush site crawler tool work. What I did, so I've done a bit of a process here. And so, you know, looking at the content for gptouring.com.au, there are a number of pages in SERPs that appear to be dead pages or sort of duplicate thin content pages. So I did some research into this site and I found by putting in the in URL colon, then you've got event equals. So this is in the URL here. You can see if this highlights nicely. The top line here. So these are, so this is a website that sells tickets for Formula One, a number of other websites, and they'll have pages dedicated to that event. And so all of those pages have event equals in the URL. So by putting this into Google, I was able to pull up the specific event pages. What I started to find when I clicked through was a commonality issue was, oh, hang on, this event location is no longer available. Okay. Then I clicked through from another one from Google. This event location isn't available. And I think you see where I'm going with this. Another one. I wasn't able to determine how many of those pages existed, but I believe it to be a reasonable size. And so what this is doing is it's like thin duplicate content. It's still being indexed in Google. People could click through to this still if they're looking up past event information, or for a number of reasons they could still be clicking through to these past event pages. So previously assumed that this page would have all the booking and event details on here, but now the event's passed, there's new messaging, which you can see in front of you. And then this is replaced across a number of pages, creating sort of, you know, low quality duplicate content. And so what should we be doing in this situation? I'd be interested in your opinion, Jason, because I don't always necessarily think there's a hard and fast rule. But my recommendation is either redirect these pages either to a category page. So if it is, I don't know, Formula One in Melbourne, and you have like a Melbourne page or a Formula One page, depending on what you feel is, you know, correct, I would redirect these pages back to sort of like a category page, or possibly next year's Melbourne F1.
Well, I was going to make that point. For something like an SEO conference or a business conference where the conference itself is different every year, you would typically want to keep your page from the previous conference with the information about that conference. For example, Brighton SEO 2019 would retain its page, and then you would create a new page for 2020 because it's two different events, and you still want people to be able to find that historical information because they have information specifically about that event. In this particular case, there is nothing specific about the year. So you could potentially actually just keep the same page for every year that it comes back, because you're only selling tickets. There isn't who were the winners or who took part or what was the exact date. So kind of depends. You can keep the pages if you want that historical information, and you can remove them if you don't. And if you remove them, you should either redirect to the category above or return a 404 with information that could be useful to the user. So if they do land on the page, you can say, you might be interested in these other wonderful Grand Prix, or if it's a site that sells camping holidays, these are the great camping holidays. Or you could return a 410, which is page gone, in which case you could then exclude the page from the index using Search Console, which would remove it. And then when Google does come back and find it 6 months later, it will see 410 gone, and it's unlikely, and I only say unlikely, to put it back in its index again. So the cleanest way to do it is, in fact, to put a 410 and to remove it through Search Console. Redirect is another great possibility. 410 with helpful information, other things that you might be interested in, or in this case, yearly events, you could want to keep it.
And that's exactly the point, isn't it? Without saying it again, it does depend. It depends on, you know, what you're looking to rank for.
Ooh, I've got another solution. Ask a Lady Solace.
Yeah, that's not bad.
Sorry, I couldn't help but joke. I couldn't resist the joke.
But you know, it does depend on what your business is, what your rankings are for particular pages, and what you're trying to get out of these event pages. But hopefully we've given you a few examples that you can take away and sort of sit back, and whether this is your site or you've got something similar that you've been mulling over, you can kind of look at it and go, okay, I've got one of a couple of options here. Which one best suits me and my business and website?
Ooh, I just had an idea for this one, and it's specifically for this one, is that if you have tickets every year for an event, you could potentially have one page that stays the same every single year, year after year, where you sell the tickets, because then you would retain all the inbound links, all the juice, and all the historical data that Google has about that page. And you use that page only for presenting that year's event and selling tickets for that year's event. Then, if you want to write a report about who was there, who was racing, who won, who fell off the track, or whatever you do in GP racing, you can then write a blog article, or in another section or a related section, a yearly report on that event. And then you can keep the two separate and make sure that your ticket selling, money-making page is always the most powerful it can be, with all those inbound links and all that historical information that Google has, and will therefore rank year after year after year and make you boatloads of money.
Exactly. And I mean, you actually touched on a great point there about, you know, if for whatever reason, let's just go with this, you know, a particular ticket selling page for an event, you just got great press, we don't know why, and as you say, a boatload of links coming to that, and then, you know, in the future all these links are hitting a page like this, you've kind of you know, you're misspending those links that you've earned to your site. So, which
is a real pity. But I mean, I think kind of we've actually gone through, I mean, I've got basically 4 stock solutions for this particular problem, and as you rightly said, and it's very annoying, but the one I use depends on the client, and depends on the way they want to progress and proceed with their site in the future. And I think that's one thing a lot of site owners forget, is to think about what's going to be happening next year and the year after that for them and for their company and for their site. Is to say, don't make short-term decisions because it's easy. Think about where you're going with your site, and will you not be creating or try and avoid creating problems for yourself further down the line?
Yeah, well, and that's I'll finish off and get onto the next section after this, but that's a great point where it's like what might be a small issue now, as we've looked at a few sites over the last couple of episodes, and as you'll know, Jason, a small issue now, put a year, 5 years onto that small issue, and that issue, you know, as an example, what we're looking at here, could have, you know, sort of become a huge monster and double, tripled, and just, you know, you not checking it after a year, 5 years, you're like, oh, this is a big issue.
think about the rolling snowball that's very small at the moment. You start rolling down the hill in the snow, and it's going to get bigger and bigger, and by the time it gets to the bottom of the hill, it's this enormous snowball that's creating enormous numbers of problems. Don't know if that helps anybody else, but I quite liked it as an analogy.
Exactly. And so the last site we'll look at today around content is the HimalayanDestination.com. Just quickly, if this is your site, this is slightly outside of what I'm going to be discussing, but I can't help myself. There seems to be some different Google Analytics tracking codes on the main site, and then when you click through to the blog, there seems to be some other Google Analytics tracking codes. So I just ensure, if this is your site, that you've got all the tracking codes in place where you want them to be. So let me seamlessly just come out of here, and we will jump into SEMrush.
I like the fact that you say seamlessly every time.
Because it's not.
Well, it's relatively seamless, all things considered. But you do say it in this kind of hopeful voice.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Well, if I make you believe it, maybe it is seamless.
I'm taking it 100%. That looks seamless to me.
So what we've got here is I've picked a page on this website, and I wanted to have a look at what it was ranking for and how we can look to then improve that. So I did some research through the website, and I used SEMrush, and I chucked in the domain, hit enter, and then what I'm given back is the organic research for the entire site. But I just wanted to look at this specific page, as I say, this page here. And what I did was I started to see that this page was about the Rupin Pass. I've never been to it, so I'm not entirely sure what it's all about. So within SEMrush, as I say, I've put in the domain. I've then got all the keywords ranking for this site, and just so I could nail down and look further about this Rupin Pass trek and try and see what I can uncover and how I can improve upon this. So I then came down, so these are some search filters for your keywords. All I simply did was just typed in the word Rupin, pressed enter, and below it gives me all the keyword variations that this site ranks for with the word Rupin in it. And as you can see, none of them are ranking particularly highly. So then what I did was I just wanted to see Rupin Pass and then look at how that keyword's ranking, who's ranking for that, what's the search volume. So I've got the search volume, I've got the keyword difficulty, I've also got keyword variations of what other people are searching around this search term. And then there's actually related keywords as well. But what I wanted to do was see who was, just for this example, who was ranking in position 1, which is India hikes. Because what I wanted to do, and a little bit what I discussed yesterday, is don't go out and copy what your competitors are doing, but do look at what your competitors are doing and see where they're adding more value and how you could possibly add more value to your content. So let's go through this. What I did was I compared these two pages. As I say, this one ranks for Rupin Pass and a number of other search terms, and this one ranks #1. So they must be doing something good, we hope. Firstly, it's always good to have a look at your title tags and meta descriptions in line with what your keywords are ranking for, just to see whether, and what your competitors title tags and meta descriptions are, to see whether they're tweaking theirs just to give a little bit more information, or have they written theirs where it's a better call to action, because that's, you know, the SERP's landing page for Google, that's our shop within the high street. Your search listing is like your shop window in a high street, and what you want to be doing is encouraging people as much as possible to click through and come into your shop off the streets. So if you've not, go on, Jason, I feel like you want to say something.
No, there's just a quick question from Brian Henry, who seems to be very enthusiastic. He was just asking, in SEMrush, can you actually enter the URL of the exact page rather than entering the domain name?
Yes. Oh yes, you can exactly do
Brilliant.
that.
But just clarification.
Yeah, what I was doing is I was sort of taking a wider approach, because I didn't know what page I wanted to look at and analyze. So I went through with the domain and then took a whole sort of correlated section of keywords that are similar, and then that's how I've broken down to the point of getting here to analyze these two sites.
Well, I think kind of that just begs the comment that SEO is page level. Yeah, and that's really important to remember. Is it's the content on your page that's important. It's your pages that are important. Obviously, there is a more global aspect to this whole thing, especially with the EAT, expertise, authority, and trust that your brand can have. But at this particular area, we're looking at page level stuff. So it is very useful to look into pages rather than looking into the entire domain. You're going to dig down very quickly, and there's not so much stuff that's going to be truly interesting at the whole website level. Sorry, carry on, Tristam.
So if because again, I realise we're pressed for time. I love to talk, so it seems to just skip by. What we can see as we scroll through, it seems like it has a fair bit of detail on here, but quickly you'll notice that there's no video, no images, and you know, there's information on the itinerary each day, which is great. What's included in the trip, what's not, but it's fairly content or word heavy, should I say. You know, we've got a great overview here, which is fantastic. You can use these jump links to jump through to the different sections, but let's have a look at the #1 ranking positioned website. So we've got a lovely image at the top. That you've got similar, if you notice, you've got similar information here and here, but personally, I feel this is kind of set out quite nicely. More aesthetically pleasing to the eye, but that's not the thing holding everything back. You know, we'll jump down here. We've got a video straight away. I love video content. I'm not a big reader. It's something I have to deal with, but I love video content. So straight away, I can click on this video about this trek, and you know, I'm getting visuals left, right, and center. And I watched a bit of the video, and there's people talking about the trek, answering questions, all sorts of information in here. And as I say, there's a lot of visuals of the trek in this video, and you're hit with that straight away. Then they neatly section everything out. So as I say, there's a clear key information at the top, very clear. And then they break the page down. So you've got the complete guide, you've got image use when you're coming down. So it's engaging as you're coming through. More images, great. And then, you know, there's, I'll end up going off on one there, so we'll keep on track. You can then go through and it breaks down the trek in a very consumable format. So before we begin, here's some quick facts. Use these pointers. There's some more jump links here. You know, lower waterfall campsite. That sounds great. You know, crossing the path. And then what was the other things I found? I think, can't remember exactly where they are, but they give ATM information. They give where's the last charging point information. All these kind of modern day queries they're answering, and that's outside of them telling you what you're going to be doing on this trek. So they're really adding a lot more expertise, authority, and trust, I would say.
Well, they're adding an awful lot of information, but there's one fundamental difference that I can see between the two, is that they're both selling a specific trek. And if you look in the right-hand column, this is selling a specific trek, but the trek itself is presented as a generic presentation of a track in the Rupin Pass. And then they're doing the upsell on the right-hand side. So they've presumably taken the track that they're selling and repackaged it without talking specifically about that track and what you do on day 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, which the other site does, and packaged it into this kind of what will look like to Google like an explanation of the Rupin Pass in general, and their upsell is quite sneaky and very clever. Whereas the other site has said this is a specific track and here's how it goes. And so my guess is you would never outrank this site without doing something that looks more generic.
Yeah, I agree. And so my last, what I liked, lots and lots of great, we've got rainfall, temperature information here. But what I liked, and what I really like about going on blogs, is that, I think it's all the way at the bottom. I won't scroll too much because it will give everyone sickness, motion sickness. They've got a Q&A further down, a comments box for people to leave comments. And what's great is people are asking further questions. This company's coming back in, answering those questions. I find that useful, throughout my career, looking up SEO, analytical information, guides, stuff like that. And you'll have people jumping in the bottom, sometimes people giving further information or asking questions. And sometimes your question is actually asked and answered within the comments section. And then the article just sort of adds to the reinforcement of what you needed to know. So
those user comments and the Q&As are really useful for multiple reasons, as you rightly say. It's very useful for the users who are on the site who are reading it. It shows to Google that people are interacting, engaging with your content, which shows that it's valuable content to your users. And it also gives Google supplementary information around the topic that helps it with the context cloud, i.e. the context of what you're talking about. So it will reinforce Google's understanding that this is about that particular pass.
Exactly. And so just really to finish this off, let's jump back in. I just want to finish this off by saying, as you can see, it's not just about writing content with keywords to get you ranked. It's about making the content engaging and useful, adding that expertise, authority, and trust.